Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in Australia. I'm Dante St James. We're going to talk about how you can reduce your reliance upon Facebook for a lot of the different things that you're doing in your business right now. Now, sometimes this could be just reducing the reliance on Facebook for advertising. Other times it could be all those other things you do use Facebook for.
Let's just say, for instance, for creating a presence for your events or a place for people to RSVP. We'll be looking at some of these and other solutions you may not have considered for how to diversify yourself away from an over reliance on Facebook for your small business. So let's get this shared and underway. Just a very quick thought before we go in there that there is far more to small business marketing than just Facebook. I do work with Facebook. I'm very proud to work with Facebook very closely, but we do know that it's just that the alternatives often to Facebook are not particularly well understood, especially by small business who don't necessarily know what the tools are that are available to them and how those tools can really help them out. What we're going to cover today is what Facebook has essentially done to marketing and why we've become so dependent upon it, the danger of going all in on just the one platform, and how to diversify your marketing as well. This is an opportunity, I guess, to see how things can go horribly wrong. I've also got some examples a little bit later on of some businesses where it did go really wrong and what they've had to do since in most of their cases. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. It's an initiative of the Australian Government and delivered in Western Australia by Business Station, in Queensland by Regional Development Australia Brisbane, and in the Northern Territory by Treaty Business Consulting. You can watch this a little bit later on YouTube, either through my own channel, through my name, Dante St James, and also through Business Station, who are I guess the guys who are presenting this. So they've got tons and tons and tons of examples of how-to stuff and webinars just like this from not just myself, but lots of others as well. And before we get too stuck into it, a bit about my background: marketing and business information systems at the University of New South Wales, on top of 6 different levels of accreditation, excuse me, with the Chartered Institute of Marketing from the UK, although I didn't. I'm also doing a lot of micro credentials through HubSpot, through Google's what they call it, the digital garage system as well. So I'm always updating those when new updates do come through. I'm also a lead trainer with Facebook, Digital Marketing Australia, a digital marketing associate accredited with Facebook, as well as a media planning professional and soon to be media buyer, creative strategy and marketing science professional as well. Work with Google's Digital Springboard project, bringing some digital literacy training to people in often remote places of Australia, and the Be Connected project with the Australian Government, delivering digital literacy training for seniors in our communities, as well as ASBAS, of course, and the new business assistance with NICE program delivered out of my pathway in North Queensland and the Northern Territory. Now, enough about me. Let's get this thing underway. The impact of marketing by Facebook has been profound in the same way that Google has as well. In fact, you can see that 80% of all money spent, it's probably about 82% when I last saw it actually, of all money spent on digital advertising is spent on either Google or Facebook. Now, considering now that digital advertising now makes up the majority of advertising when compared to what we call the traditional advertising channels, we're talking about billboards, print, street press, TV, radio, what we class as, the traditional marketing models. It's now around about 55% digital, 45% traditional. And if 80% of all that money spent on digital advertising is spent on either Google or Facebook, then we can safely say that both Google and Facebook are bigger than any one segment of advertising in Australia. There's more money spent on Google in Australia than on television in its entirety. There's more money spent on Facebook than on the entire radio industry, which is kind of disturbing because you think of that and go, wow, there's so many communities that rely upon radio and television as part of our entertainment culture, really. So when you see that so much of that spend is concentrated into just a couple of companies, you got to think, is this really the right way we need to go? Now, there's two very distinct kinds of marketing at play here. There's what we call search marketing and discovery marketing. And in digital marketing, search is represented mostly by Google, but also in part, I guess, by the whether that's finding a business, finding a friend, finding an answer to a question, you actually make the decision to go there. You're consciously going, I want to look for this answer. I want to look for this thing. And excuse me, this cough is playing up today. Good thing I'm not traveling today. Everyone will be staring at me in my mask. You delivered ads then that are or organic results that are related to the search you put in. So it's what we call a high intention marketing. People are intending to find you. People are intending to connect with you. People are intending to buy when they specifically look for something in Google. It's like when we went through the old yellow pages and we're looking for a plumber. There's a pretty high intention that we're looking to book a plumber right then and there. And the same thing happens with search marketing. We are pretty certain that we are intentionally going there to find that solution and to perhaps buy or book something straight away. The opposite of that is discovery marketing. And this is represented by, I guess, the social media platforms and YouTube to that matter too. Let's just say you're on Facebook. You're usually there to interact with people you know, or you want to be entertained. Now, you're not there searching for anything, although you might be searching for a previous post you saw, but that still was something that you once upon a time discovered. What you do then, you discover new products. Looking for the content that comes up on your feed, but you are generally just browsing, what we used to call surfing the net, which we may be doing as surfing the, I guess, surfing the, like surfing the feed these days, I suppose. So you are not specifically looking for these things. They are just coming through to you. In this way, discovery marketing is very much like the traditional marketing channels such as TV and radio, or even reading magazines and print. You bought the newspaper to get the news, but you also got the ads. You watch the television to see a show, but you also get the ads. You listen to the radio station to either hear the news or listen to the music, but you also get the ads. There's something that comes along as part of the package. So that's how these two differ. The search marketing is always around the similar things we used to do when we went to look in directories. Now we look at Google, which is the biggest directory of them all. Discovery marketing, we still to a degree still listen to radio and watch TV. Those things have not gone away. But at the same time, we're now splitting that time between things like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, et cetera, LinkedIn, all those. So what's then the problem here is that you need to understand what it is that you're currently so reliant upon Facebook for. So what do you discover on Facebook? You discover things like new products. You discover new services that you didn't know that you maybe needed or that you didn't know existed. You'll discover advertising and promotions from businesses and organizations for workshops, online webinars, live events and shows and bands and performances and theatre and discussion forums and poetry slams and special nights at the local wine bar where they're trying different wines. All those different events kind of things are very, very big on Facebook. You also will discover things like new ideas or new lifestyles or new fashion, new clothing, new bathroom fixtures and fittings that you may not have known before. You'll also make new and old friends. So you'll be reconnecting with people that you maybe went to high school with a very long time ago, or you're making new friends just from the fact that you've wandered through life and these people have become now part of your life. You'll also find what we call influencers. These are people that you want to follow that deliver content that you really, really enjoy. And a good question from Chris here is asking, is this the same as inbound and outbound marketing? A little bit different. Inbound marketing it's just basically something that's coming to you. So if they're coming to you, they're coming to your website, for instance. They're people who you have to pull to you. Whereas outbound marketing it's kind of like you're sending out an email and it's going out to people and it's asking for them to reply to you, or you're giving them a call, or you're sending them a sample or something like that just to get them in there. Now, the result of in and outbound marketing can be a Google search. that someone gets that piece of marketing from you, that email, that sample, that flyer in the mail, that phone call, and they'll look you up and see what's going on. Now that would be, say, the result of something like outbound marketing. Inbound marketing then comes as a result of, I guess, things like ads on Facebook, ads on Google, because they'll result in an inquiry that's coming to you. So that would be regarded as inbound marketing caused by search marketing output. Then the same thing with Facebook would be that, yes, it can lead people to inbound marketing because you're putting the word out there. So the same way you put a TV ad out there, and that will result in people calling your business, or you put a radio ad out there and that results in people calling your business. That's regarded as inbound marketing. Whereas sending things out to people, I guess it's where the customer is at their part of the journey. So if we went really deeply into marketing theory here, we'd be looking at things like the customer journey, the awareness, consideration, and conversion journey. Where at the awareness stage, people don't know about you, so you have to make them aware of you. So that might be outbound marketing. Inbound marketing could be even to the degree of just the result of that outbound marketing. So there's different theories that come around this, but they all kind of sort of swim around the idea of, is it search-based, where people are on their way in looking for you, or is it discovery-based, which I suppose is you reaching out to make people aware of you? Hope that makes it clear. Thanks, Chris. Great question. Now, when it comes to where Facebook dominates, they have a very, very strong position in the market in things like events and RSVPing and booking of tickets. The ease of use of the platform, although the ads platform has got more difficult over the last few years, it's still one of the more simple ads platforms to use. And by the fact that so many people use it and so many people are able to train you in how to use it, it's continuing to be a very, very common platform that's very easy for small business, which is also where Facebook dominates. Facebook and Google and small business are just best buddies. Now, Facebook, more so in recent years, has become more dominant in the small business space because Google ads have become increasingly expensive. Google ads tend to be dominated in certain areas for big business. So for instance, you're looking for pest control, you can guarantee that the pest control franchises are going to be buying up all the costs per click and the highest rate in every market they possibly can as part of what they do for their franchisees. Small businesses can find that very hard to push through to. Even if they outbid the big franchisor, the franchisor is going to come back and outbid them to a point where it's going to force the small solo business and the independent business to have to pull back on their spend a lot. When it comes to sole traders, Facebook is without peer. It is where just about every coach, therapist, massage therapist, consultants, all those people will tend to advertise. That's largely because it's disproportionately cheaper than what its reach would say. So we might think, oh my God, it's going to cost me $100 a month to do this advertising. But that same sort of advertising on television, for instance, would cost you $2,500 a month, or on radio might cost even more in regional areas because of the presence that radio has in markets. So when you start to look at that kind of stuff, you go, okay, that $100 a month is really very small fry. And if that's all you can afford, there's really only one platform that's going to get you anywhere, and that's Facebook. The sales funnel creation is where I think things like Facebook and the social networks come into their own. The sales funnel is based upon those three stages: the awareness, the consideration, and the conversion. I wish I had some screens for this because I usually do have that. But in the awareness, it's your potential customer knows nothing of you, doesn't even know they need you. The consideration is that they're in that point where they do need you, but they are shopping around for alternatives on top of you. So you then have an opportunity to re-engage with them or further educate them on your products or your services, so they then understand why they should choose you. And finally, in the conversion stage is where they choose you. Now, different platforms seem to sit in very different parts of that funnel. So you would say that Google tends to sit at the bottom of the funnel. That's where people are specifically looking for either you or what you do, and hopefully you will show up in those search results. Facebook sits in all areas of that funnel, but particularly in the upper levels. So it sits more in the top of the funnel, which is the awareness stage, where people discover your brand, people discover what you do, people understand what it is you do, but they may not need you yet. But then if they've watched half of your video, there's nothing stopping you from, and this is the next big thing where Facebook dominates, is retargeting that ad. So if someone watches half of the video So it's a 1-minute video you've made in your ad, and then someone's watched half of it, then you can retarget that person who watched half of your video with another video. So now they're aware of you, they know who you are, they know what you do. Now you can build on that hunger by tomorrow delivering them another ad, or even within the next 2 hours, delivering an ad that pushes them a little bit further and closer to you as an option. It's also good for retargeting things like visitors to websites, although that might be taking a little bit of a hit lately with Apple blocking a lot of that tracking. But at the same time, you've got that option of, you know, being able to retarget things that people do on the Facebook and Instagram platforms rather than what they're doing on websites. It's still remarkably powerful. Now, this is a good question again from Chris. How do you know a Facebook user? How do I know as a Facebook user about that, what I'm watching? Oh, okay. How do you know as a Facebook user that you're watching an ad? It'll always say sponsored in the post. So at the very top of the post, it'll say sponsored. Now, retargeting can be done from any business, not just through ads. Any video of yours that's on your Facebook business page or it's in a group can be retargeted, as you can retarget the viewers of those particular videos. So that doesn't matter whether the video comes as an ad or whether the video comes as a piece of regular content on the feed, or whether it comes as an Instagram video. As long as that video has been watched, it's possible for you as an advertiser to retarget people to be able to, who have watched that ad before, and target them with something further down the track of what you're doing. So that whole sales funnel retargeting, being able to get people at the different stages of the journey that they're at, is where Facebook really does shine, way above the other platforms. Google does have a certain amount of that too, but when it comes to being able to take people through that funnel, Google is all about the idea that you may discover an ad on YouTube, for instance, rather than within Google itself. It's within YouTube, part of Google, definitely a different part of Google. But if you might see an ad on YouTube, for instance, then you could essentially retarget that with Google ads. Now that might be a little bit difficult because people are not necessarily searching on Google for that at the time. But what they may be doing is saying, well, instead of searching on Google for this, I may be watching more videos. So the first video makes me aware of where people are at, aware of a particular product or service through an ad. And then 2 hours later, I could see a different ad for the same product, which is bringing me down that sales funnel. So that shows you there are alternatives to Facebook, even in that particular one. And I'll cover a little bit more of this as we move into the how do we then become less reliant upon Facebook as a platform. So Facebook's tools, and these are the things that we need to find some, I guess, some alternatives to that dominate their events platform, is phenomenal. It's one of the oldest parts of Facebook. It was been around since 2008, I think, or 2010, one of those. And it's particularly old and very, very mature. It's something which is used so much. It's the biggest events platform in the world, far bigger than Eventbrite, far bigger than any other platform that advertises events. It is pretty much where all events tend to be. Another place is where you can pre-schedule things. So if you're not someone who wants to be doing social media and digital marketing every single day of your business, you can pre-schedule things a long way in advance. So you can get in there and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this all on a Sunday afternoon, and then I'm going to let the thing run for the rest of the month. The insights on the Facebook platform are phenomenally good. They are very, very insightful in knowing what the behaviors of people are, other things that people like from those who may be interested in what you're doing as well. And you can go into a thing called audience insights that lets you build audiences for your ads based upon people's behavior and the things that they have affinities with. So that is a very, very hard thing to consider replacing. The video content creation, even though the content creation tools are not fantastic in Facebook, they do have Creator Studio, which allows you to create videos, especially from live video. And live video is definitely an area where Facebook is absolutely dominating. Nobody comes close to them when it comes to streaming live video. And then in e-commerce promotion, you probably have noticed there's like Facebook shops have popped up in the last year, and that's become a very powerful place for people to be able to put sort of almost a copy of their online store from their website into Facebook, so that people can essentially shop directly from Facebook, but even more importantly from Instagram, where so much of that online shopping seems to happen. And then, of course, there's the ads platform. Facebook's ads platform is the most advanced and yet the most simple of any of them anywhere on any platform. It's far more simple to use and cheaper to use than Google. It's a lot more simple than LinkedIn. It's way, way cheaper than using something like TikTok, which is horrifically expensive. So what you need to do now is look at all these tools where Facebook dominates and think, well, what am I going to replace all these with if I need to replace them? What do I need to do to become less reliant on these big juggernaut parts of what Facebook does so well? The reality is you probably won't be able to replace everything. Not everything on Facebook is going to be easily replaced with something else. In some cases, we're not going to look at replacing, we're going to look at reducing your reliance. So remember that we're not talking about necessarily throwing Facebook out. We're just saying, let's reduce your reliance a bit on Facebook by diversifying out a bit more to some other options that may make it a bit less reliant upon them for everything you're doing. Now, it may seem like things are chugging along just fine right now. It may seem like things are just happy right now. It may seem that things are just going fine. We don't necessarily need to be too worried about getting rid of Facebook or replacing it or reducing our reliance on it. There seems to be a safe place to be. But there are dangers when you go all in on one platform. And some of those dangers are that some of the previous tools you got used to and found particularly useful are now ripped away from you. I used to make very, very good use of a part of Facebook pages called Notes. And Notes were basically a blog. So it's similar to having an article in something like LinkedIn or a blog on your website. You could have essentially a blog on your Facebook page and allowed you to communicate much greater pieces of information than what you can through just a simple post. And it had formatting tools, you can add photos. It was actually a really fun, good tool to use. The problem was that it didn't translate well to the mobile world, and not that many businesses ended up even using it. I was a heavy user on it, so unfortunately I lost all my notes. I was able to transfer them out by copying and pasting into other platforms, but it did annoy the crap out of me that I put so much work into something that Facebook seemed to want to encourage us all to do, and they rewarded us for using it and putting it on the feed, but they didn't stick with it. They ripped it away. There's also the costs of advertising can go up over time. And whilst most of this is usually due to supply and demand issues rather than the platform just going, yes, yes, give me more money, give me more of that dinero. No, it's not quite that simple. It's also mostly due to the demand for the space that's there going up, more people wanting to get on there. And in the last 2.5 years, there's been quite a steep increase in the cost of advertising. What we call the cost per thousand, or CPM, of reaching people has gone up. The cost per conversion has gone up as well. And it's not this arbitrary line that Facebook goes, yes, we're just going to be putting it up. It does go up and down. There's times when the costs get lower. So for instance, at the beginning of COVID, the advertising of, well, a good question from Chris, what is the CPM of Facebook now? It depends. It depends on the time, the date, the segment you're going for. It's not a set rate. It's something which goes up and down according to what the demand is. So for instance, the CPM, the cost per thousand back at the beginning of COVID, so early last year, was very, very low because people just suddenly pulled all of their advertising out of everything because they didn't know what was going on, and a lot of closures were starting to happen. And then as we got to the middle of COVID, so probably around about August, September last year, the CPM went way up. Because what happened was that the economy changed, and we went from being an economy that was due to people coming to our shops and our restaurants to us going out to people. So what happened, all the delivery services flooded Facebook, and it became relevant to almost everybody to have some sort of delivery service bringing something of some description to you. Supermarkets increased their advertising. A lot of the what we call survival products, they started advertising things like extra NBN and extra data for phones, and phone companies also started advertising. And what happened is that we also saw a big increase of big name advertisers coming into the market. So by big name advertisers, I'm talking about, people like Maya, Kmart have come onto social media in massive numbers, particularly onto Pinterest, funnily enough, that Kmart's putting a lot of attention right now. And then there's others who may have, started to go onto Facebook again for the first time. In the case of a lot of small businesses that started the work from home thing, they started running their businesses, consulting, coaching, the sort of things I do. We started advertising a lot on Facebook. So with all those people, the CPM went up, 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 and the cost of conversions went up, 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 up. And then the actual conversions we're getting, the reach seemed to be getting lower for that higher amount of money. Now, that for me changes every month. For my average ad spend on Facebook is about $7,500 a month for my various businesses that I run, and the CPMs and the cost of that go up and down and up and down all the time. I can always predict what I'm going to spend because my budget's my budget, but I can't predict what that's going to buy me. Some days that might buy me 32 conversions and 6,000 impressions. But then other days it might buy me 10 conversions and 12,000 impressions. So it just depends on how desirable my products are or how desirable my services are on any one day of the week. It will go up and down. So if you need that very, I guess, very predictable view of what you're going to get every day, this is on a very high demand platform like Facebook or even Google, you're going to find that you don't have that predictability. You can predict how much you're going to spend, but you can't always predict what your outcomes are going to be simply because it is a supply and demand auction based way of advertising. Another area is that previously free things can become paid. And I found this with things like pieces of software, not so much the platforms, but the software that I use for different things can become a little bit crowded out with free trials and freemium. So you got a basic version for free and then you have to pay. Or when those companies suddenly have investors saying, okay, mate, you now need to start making money for us. And we saw this, I guess, in Uber. Uber got very expensive this past year. It used to be the cheap version of getting around. It was very handy. And then suddenly the price went up. So for instance, going to the airport in Darwin, where I'm based, used to cost about $22. It suddenly became 32. So it went up a whole $10 almost overnight. It has not come back down again. At very peak times, it can actually be up to $80 each way to get there. And sometimes I just don't have the option because the taxis aren't around. There's no more Ubers. There's not really a lot of different choices. And even if you went to another ride sharing company, they all the same drivers. They all drive for all the different networks. So it's not going to make a difference which one you go with. It just might make a difference on, how much you get paid for it. And naturally, people, the drivers are going to go with where they're going to be paid more. If surge pricing is on Uber, but it's not on with DD, for instance, then for instance, they're not going to pick up the DD person. They're going to pick up the Uber person. So you're going to wait even longer. So just like that, what you thought might have been free or cheap has suddenly become expensive or just paid. And that can happen with the platforms as well. We used to have things such as the ability to be able to create articles, for instance, in LinkedIn back in 2014 was only offered to a very limited amount of people. When I did my first one, it got delivered to 42,000 readers within a few days. And it was like, holy crap, this is amazing. So I kept making content, 37,000, 64,000. And then all of a sudden, a month later, I was getting 22 reads, 44 reads. It's like suddenly everything changed because they were no longer rewarding these early adopters. They just went, now you're in with everybody else. Everyone can do this now. And because of the huge, massive stuff coming into the platform, then my stuff just got pushed aside as the celebrities like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and all those guys started contributing to the platform. And they're a lot more famous than I am. There's also like changing audiences. People move around platforms just the same way that people are not online 24 hours a day and are not interacting as much overnight as what they are during the day, for instance. Then you'll find that changing audiences also ebb and flow. They'll come and they'll go. Whilst Facebook's overall audience has increased over the last year, that's largely to do with the fact that Facebook's a great community tool. It's really, really good at connecting people together and getting news out of that. But that audience could change. They could become sick of that. Video watching on Facebook has decreased, whilst more people are now watching video on TikTok. For instance, a great place to go and watch video if you want to be entertained for an hour, just watching constant different things coming through. I think in one of the movies I saw a very, it would have been something like, like Blade Runner or that kind of movie. It was a thing called a blipvert, which was such a short advertisement that was so quick and got into your brain and actually caused problems in your brain. You start to think that's almost like TikTok. It's such short stuff, which is so impactful and really gives you that shot of feel good hormone that's going to make you want to keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. It becomes quite addictive. Now they all do it: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Everyone is optimized to get you on there for longer, but those audiences, they come and they go. At the moment, there's a big drift of people away to watching video on TikTok as opposed to watching video on Facebook. What you find, there's mostly a younger audience flowing out, but there's older people who are also now sharing their time. More time is spent now watching video on TikTok than what there are people who are spending time on Facebook. Facebook is not the #1 social media network in terms of the amount of time people spend on it. In fact, it's about number 3. So #1 is YouTube, followed by TikTok, then followed by Facebook. That's time spent on. The amount of people on them, then you're looking at the biggest audience of all naturally is Facebook, but YouTube's not far after that. And then it's quite a big drop till you get down to things like Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, those kind of things. You can also be, and we've got some examples of this coming up, you can be banned for little or no reason. You can just be completely just ripped off Facebook, put in the Facebook jail if you get too opinionated about something, if you're writing a lot of anti-vax kind of stuff, if you're doing stuff which is, not backed by facts and it's just you having a rant or you're being abusive or something like that, you can be banned. And I've watched this happen to a competitor of mine in my market, who he's very anti-vax, very anti-everything, anti-government, what you call a libertarian. He wants to own guns. He thinks you should have a gun in his house, and he's very, very open about all this on Facebook. He just shares all sorts of stuff which is quite aggressive, very demeaning of women. He doesn't like gay people. He's just completely a bit of a dick, to be honest. I have to be really honest. The guy's not a great guy, but he often gets banned on Facebook and he comes back in with new profiles. Now, this is a guy who runs a web design business. So he is also trying to grow his business at the same time as being someone who's very outspoken about his opinions. He gets banned all the time. His ads get banned all the time. So he just stopped advertising on Facebook because, they're against his free speech. Apparently free speech means no consequences. But he was, he just doesn't want to use Facebook, but he realized that if he wants to reach people, he needs to be on Facebook. So his business presence is so very different to his personal preference, but he still hasn't learned this lesson about how to restrict your audience on your profile so that the general public don't put 2 and 2 together and say, this is the guy from that web design studio, and then make a very free speech decision about whether they want to deal with him or not. And he gets banned all the time. Others that get banned, I guess some examples like this gym in Melbourne. And honestly, I really feel for these guys because they are a great business. This is a fantastic business, and it's a business that should not have gone through what it's going through right now. And they are. In the middle of COVID, they couldn't do things in their gym. They were in Melbourne. Still around. They are in Melbourne. They couldn't open the gym. People couldn't go and visit the gym. So what happened was that something inexplicable that we don't even know what it was, because I've had to look at this so many times over and I cannot see it. And I'm just at the point where I don't even know how to help this guy, is that their ads account got banned. Something they did caused them to get banned. And then they appealed it and appealed. And then Facebook was basically, no, you can't have any more. You've appealed too much now. We've knocked you back, blah. So we've gone through looking for what those things may have been that caused this, and we still cannot find what the problem was. It was just pointing to, and we thought it may have been before and after shots that were on the landing page. We're not really 100% sure what it was, but it's something that caused them to be banned. Now, they have no Facebook page to speak of. I think they may have set up another one perhaps, but they are still pretty much trapped in this idea that they cannot advertise on Facebook, and their biggest source of new business has always been ads on Facebook for their classes, their PT sessions, their gym memberships. So they've had a really hard time of it because they have no way of being able to access the things that they're trying to sell. Then we go to this example, Regency Bathrooms in Darwin is a friend of mine, and she had a very similar thing go on, except that she was hacked. So when she was hacked through her email, they got into her email and were able to change things. They took over her Facebook page, kicked her out of it, and now she has no access to that Facebook page that she'd spent 9 years building a following on. So she was devastated naturally, but what it did do is make her feel like that she shouldn't really rely 100% on Facebook for her new business anymore. Then set up a new audience, grow it to new people, and then diversify out to different things. And I now know that she advertises quite heavily through Google, as well as Facebook. She doesn't advertise through Facebook. She promotes through Facebook organically, but her ads are on Google. She also advertises on other things like Pinterest, which is a great place for inspiration for bathrooms. So her good news story was she was able to turn that around. And now, about a year and a half later, she does not have any, it's not even close. Like she's well and truly wiped out all the losses and is back in a really powerful position again. Another example would be these guys, a big radio network, the second biggest in the country. They were caught up in Facebook's big banning of news. So any sort of news outlets, news providers, all that were all banned in that very short period of time, about a week. And of course, it was not one of Facebook's better moves, but it's showing that Facebook can just very, very easily just switch something off if they want to. If they want to get a change through, if they want to make politicians take notice, they can just stand on small business and just go, boom, done. That's you're out. And so this happened that the way that this particular network had geared themselves towards so much stuff on Facebook meant that they were not present on other platforms particularly heavily, not on Instagram, not on TikTok, not on Snapchat. They were very loosely in those other areas, but they hadn't really done much with that. In fact, they were so reliant on Facebook that their news on their website, which used to get tons and tons and tons of hits from Facebook, now got almost nothing. So they hadn't optimized their websites for Google results. So they hadn't optimized to get the search for particular news topics in Google. So they didn't get traffic that way. They were stuck in the mortar and unable to do much online. And online is almost as important as their terrestrial broadcast these days on radio. So it was just an example of, if you become so reliant on one platform, the problem can be that when that platform is ripped away from you, you've got no recourse. You've got nowhere else you can turn to. So how do you then go and diversify your marketing online? And some of these things, remember, are not necessarily replacements. They're just things you can use either in addition to or instead of Facebook for certain functions that you'd normally rely on Facebook to do. So we're not saying dump everything, leave Facebook and all that. By no means do that, because it's just silly. That's still where the audience is. It's still where the great tools and the best tools are. So the first things we need to do is look at those again, what we saw before. What are the tools that Facebook dominates in? We saw that was events, the ability to schedule events, get reminders of events, RSVP for events, all that sort of stuff is there. Scheduling of your posts ahead of time, Business Suite and Creator Studio, excellent tools for being able to schedule things ahead. Insights, the amount of audience data you can get from Facebook is phenomenal. It's great. The content creation tools such as Instagram, Creator Studio as well for making video, for doing live video, it's pretty much second to none. It's a very, very good one to do. E-commerce promotion, where you've got an actual front end shop on Facebook and Instagram where people can tap on things, go through your website and buy that product in 1 or 2 taps. That is very good on Facebook and Instagram. So what else do we have out there to replace or perhaps do in addition to that? And then the ads platform itself is a great ads platform. It's fantastic. It's that in terms of value for money, it's still the best value for money of all the tools that are out there. But who else has ads platforms that work in a similar way, are usable, and still are pretty effective for what your business might do? So first up, we look at the booking and RSVP part of events. So if you're looking to take bookings and you currently use the RSVP tool, the going, not going, maybe going bit that's in your events, and you're using that as a way for people to mark down they're doing your events, or even if you're taking payments on those events as well, you can do that through any number of these third-party tools. Like Eventbrite's probably the biggest out there. My favorite is Humanitix. The reason why I promote them all the time is simply because they're cheaper than Eventbrite, way cheaper in terms of their fees. They're Australian owned. They're a not-for-profit organization that actually gives away parts of their profits to two different kinds of projects, to scholarships for Indigenous students to attend schools in the cities who are from regional areas, and also for places where they are helping to educate girls in developing nations who normally wouldn't have access to an education. So I think they're a fantastic team, an amazing story behind what they do, and so I like to support them. Local Tickets is actually owned by Grant Broadcasters, who we're just looking at. So they have their own ticket system that's things like, if you're in Ballarat, it's Ballarat tickets, it's Geelong tickets, it's Perth tickets, Darwin tickets, Townsville tickets.com.au. So they've got the local versions of that all over the country. And then Sticky Tickets is one of the more simple ticket systems, which has also got fairly low fees as well. So there's lots of options for excuse me, taking the booking and handling things like RSVPs or even payments for those things. So you don't necessarily need Facebook for that bit. Then you've got the promotions of the events. Now, Facebook is not the only channel where you can promote events. With a bit of creativity, you can promote events through ads and posts on YouTube. You can do it through, especially if you're very creative and you know how to be very attention grabbing in very short videos. TikTok's great for that. You've got up to a minute to work with in TikTok. You've got up to 30 seconds in Instagram Reels that you can use. LinkedIn has an excellent events thing, particularly if there are free events that you don't need to use for like if you don't use a third-party ticketing system and you just want to get the RSVP and get your list of attendees from the system like you do from Facebook, LinkedIn has that as well. Mind you though, I guess that on LinkedIn it's more so that people are looking to do this as part of a business or personal, not so much a personal development, maybe professional development stuff on LinkedIn. Personal development and personal interest and entertainment probably doesn't go down so well on LinkedIn. That's more of a Facebook thing. But just if you're someone who does do professional development stuff, webinars like the ones that I do here, then LinkedIn's a great place to find out about those things, because that's where all the business people are. People interested in business stuff are all out there. And Twitter itself you can use as just a feed where you can fire off information promotions about what you're doing, using tagging people in it, and I guess to a lesser degree hashtagging different things in there that people may be searching for in your local area. But I think when it comes to the events promotion, Facebook is still very, very good. It's very, very good at being able to very simply boost out that event to lots of different people to notice, rather than these other ones, which you may have to stretch a bit further and a bit more creative to make it work for you. So while you may not be able to completely replace it, it may be something you can do in addition to Facebook, therefore becoming a little bit less dependent. For me, the events on Facebook are probably less than 30% of where people come to my events from. About 60, no, not that, about 40% maybe would come from the Business Station website. Because that's where they've been trained to go to. So you probably found yourself and you went through there. But then a whole lot of people are now coming to my webinars through LinkedIn, because I'm putting them on there and inviting people in the areas that I cover. So Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia, all those three areas I promote to my following, and then they can then promote out to other people in their areas, because the things I do are free. Ads platform wise, the closest that you can get to the Facebook ads platform is probably Google and LinkedIn have very, very similar ads platform. In fact, LinkedIn's is very, very, very similar to Facebook's. All the terminology is the same: the awareness, consideration, conversion stuff, the the campaign, the ad set, the ad. They're all the same terminology, really. They've kind of taken what's great about Facebook's platform and copied it into LinkedIn. Google, very, very different, I guess, because when you're advertising, you're not advertising to the discovery, to people who have not yet heard of you. You're advertising to people who are looking for exactly what it is you do. So if you are a gym and a personal trainer, then you are somebody who is being looked for when someone looks for gym in South Perth or gym in Gold Coast, something like that. So you're part of those search results. So it's a very, very different kind of ads platform to what the social networks are, where people don't know who you are and you're making them aware of you and what you do, and that they may need what you do for the very first time. TikTok's ads platform is not complex. It's very expensive. The least amount of money you can spend advertising on TikTok per month is $3,000. That's the lowest level of advertising on TikTok. Madness, hey, $3,000 a month. What kind of, like, I don't spend that much, or I spend a lot of money on advertising, but I don't spend that much, I guess, on something like TikTok, where not many of my audience would be. So that's not going to be an option for most people. It's mainly big brands, high volume e-commerce websites, those kind of things that are trying to insert themselves into the buying of the impulse buying of large numbers of cheap products tends to be really good for TikTok. Because let's face it, if you spend $3,000 a month but you're selling $20,000 worth of stuff, then that's probably a good result. Like you know, it's what, not a 30, about 15% ad spend, 15% spend on your ads for what the return's going to be is a pretty amazing result. Twitter has a very similar ads platform to Facebook as well. So you can advertise as promoted tweets, that kind of thing. The only problem I would say that in Australia, we do not have a huge amount of people who are on Twitter. We're not a Twitter nation, not in the same way that the US is, or even Canada is a lot more Twitter oriented. And the audience that tends to be on Twitter is not particularly young and high consumption. They tend to be middle-aged men, particularly middle-aged white men, journalists, news people who are looking for breaking news to sort of find out ideas of what's going on. So you start to realize why so much news media is geared towards that particular audience, is because they're relying upon that audience to give them their feeds to new news as it's happening in their towns and suburbs and cities. YouTube is part of Google's ad platform. So you go to Google Ads to be able to do YouTube ads. It's the video ad version of Google Ads. Now, the difference is that you have to make that creative video. So it has to be about 15 seconds long at the longest. You don't have much longer than that. Otherwise, you can get skippable. So you can have longer, but the skip now button comes up. YouTube ads are probably the most hated of all ads on any platform anywhere. And you'll find that as many people as they can try to block ads on YouTube when they're doing it. So they're not very popular. But I won't say they're not effective, because YouTube is my equal highest ads platform that I use for my clients. And the results we're getting out of YouTube ads are remarkable. It actually is really good. There's a lot of value and a lot of watch time on YouTube. So the ability to be able to find an ads platform that reaches people who are video oriented and are there to learn something, to see something, to enjoy something, it reaches people. It's like television. It's exactly like television. You didn't ask to see the ads, but you're seeing them anyway. Now, the offset of that is people like myself, I don't see YouTube ads because I've got YouTube Premium, which is ad free and gives me access to YouTube's music channel as well. So it's like Spotify, but it's Google's version. So for me, I never see those ads. They just never come up for me. But I do know that others have seen it, because the campaigns that I'm running are very well viewed just for advertising something in the area of Mackay. We're in central Queensland. So you're talking about Gladstone, Mackay, Rockhampton kind of area, out to places like Biloela, all those kind of areas. The ads that went there are being viewed really, really heavily in those areas. Now, you've got to consider whether your audience is on YouTube. Consider also, though, that the amount of people in Australia who are on YouTube is about the same that are on Facebook. So we definitely know that there's people watching this stuff. And they're gonna see these ads, particularly if you, you know, if they are, if they're in areas where there's not a lot of other options for entertainment. Let's put it that way, boring places. Chris has just asked if a YouTube ad, do you have to pay if people skip your ad? So what it is, they can't skip your ad when it first comes up. It's just when it goes to that 15 seconds, it's unskippable. Then if your ad is 30 seconds long, you still pay for that 15-second view. So as long as they've viewed part of that ad, so the idea would be to make sure that your video ad is front loading all the important stuff, like your brand, your offer, the why they should buy it. Whereas the back end of the ad is a bit more fluffy. It could be more details. So make sure that the very compelling information is all front loaded into the first 15 seconds of that ad. There's different levels. Like you can be in skippable ads, which costs a lot less to be on there. And that's where someone can just skip the ad regardless of the time. It goes for like 5 seconds, they can skip it. The 15-second skippable, though, is where most of the action is. And that's the stuff where you're going to get the best value and the best viewing. Just make sure, though, that all that compelling information that you need to put across is in the first 15 seconds of your 30-second ad, if that's how long the ad is that you're putting forward on there. LinkedIn ads, as we saw, as I said before, practically a carbon copy of Facebook ads, but more expensive in terms of CPM and on conversions. And this is mainly because smaller network, much more highly targeted towards a particular niche, which is people who are professional, job seekers, all those kinds, people looking for software, looking for expensive things for their businesses rather than looking for things for themselves. So you may find that's probably not a place for you. Instagram, on the other hand, is part of Facebook, but you can run a sponsored post, a promoted post, as it's called, on Instagram without the full Facebook ads platform. Although that's getting integrated more and more in some cases, people have had their accounts upgraded to a point where they cannot any longer do it through Insta. They have to do it through Facebook ads or through Business Suite. So that said, though, you can avoid advertising on Facebook in the Facebook ads platform. You can just say, I don't want to advertise on Facebook at all. I want all my ads to go onto Instagram and Instagram stories or Instagram Discover or Instagram feed. So you can avoid Facebook by just saying your placements in your ad sets are just going to go to Instagram placements. Another area where Facebook is dominant is in video content creation. Well, there's no more better an alternative than YouTube. It's a fantastic place to do video ads because people are expecting it, especially if your video ad answers the kind of questions that people are asking or is relevant to the lifestyle of the person who's watching. Now, a lot of this will be against categories. So people who are looking for handyman stuff, they're looking for DIY. If you've got products that match that, you can match the intention of people looking at DIY things. So that Bunnings has very heavy advertising. Same with Home Hardware and Mitre 10 have lots of advertising on YouTube for those categories. We have the beauty influencer channels, the cosmetic companies, shampoo makers, all that sort of thing are very heavily invested in ads for those areas. When it's like things like fitness and online training tips and all that, then activewear and personal trainers that are very heavily advertising into those categories. So you just need to know that when you're advertising like you do in Google and even in Facebook, you're looking for the most relevant match for what your business does. TikTok's video content creation is excellent for very short form. In fact, I just usually I make it in TikTok and I download it to use it on other channels like Instagram and Snapchat and all the stories on YouTube, they're called shorts on YouTube, stories on LinkedIn, stories on Facebook and Instagram as well. It just means, and fleets are what the stories are on Twitter. So usually I just do it in TikTok and it brings across the little watermark of TikTok and I don't care. I just put it across all those channels because it's the better video maker. And if your video is a high enough impact and it's really creative and people like it, they're going to like it, even if the algorithm on each platform tries to pull it back because you've got a watermark of TikTok on it. It's fine. Just just find the thing that works for you best and then use it on other platforms if you want to. Scheduling content does not require Facebook. YouTube, you can schedule things to YouTube. You can schedule videos going up there, your organic videos. You can schedule things going on to Instagram through Business Suite. In fact, Instagram now allows you to schedule Instagram stories as well as Instagram feed. Tweets can be scheduled, TikToks can be scheduled, Instagram can be not scheduled from the platform itself, but from third-party platforms. And Google My Business stuff can even be scheduled outside of Google My Business. So for instance, I use a system called Social Pilot. I used to use another one called Sendable and Buffer and a lot of other tools like that. Hootsuite can do a lot of this as well. You can schedule your videos on YouTube from Social Pilot. I can schedule from Buffer. I can schedule TikToks and Instagram Reels and tweets and LinkedIn posts to both company pages and to my personal page on LinkedIn. And then I can also schedule in updates or what they call, I think they're actually called updates, usually called posts, but they're called updates to Google My Business. So it comes up in the information panel when your business comes up in Google. So there's tons of places where you can schedule content that don't require you to necessarily use Facebook to do that. And then e-commerce promotion, a lot of the e-commerce platforms themselves allow you to have some sort of promotion on there. So you can now, you can tie in links to your products on TikTok. So if you're showing off, this sexy coffee glass thing that you want to sell on TikTok, you can now have people tap on it and it'll lead them through to your website where you can sell it. Google My Business allows you to put in your products and link through to your website to pay for them. Etsy has its own internal promotions so that you can force yourself to the top of a category by paying enough money. Instagram, through Facebook Shops and Instagram shopping, allows you to integrate in your website to be able to be tapped on a product on Instagram, and then it goes out to be able to purchase that on your website. Amazon also has Amazon ads, which allows you to promote your particular products on Amazon higher up the list of consideration in its category. So it's not like you don't have any options. You've got tons of options to be able to do all this. It's just that it's a matter of choosing which ones work for you, either instead of Facebook or maybe as an alternative extra on top of Facebook. And for the insights, every platform has excellent insights to be able to read how people are doing. You can use Google's data studio. Excuse me. You can use Google's data studio, which pulls in lots of different information from different sources, like all these e-commerce platforms, WooCommerce, Magento, Shopify, and allows you to display that data within one dashboard, which can show you the behaviors of consumers buying your stuff. Wix has its own internal data that you can read. Google My Business displays how many people have been coming through your profile and whether they clicked on things in your profile, actually try to call you from the profile, etc. And then Shopify has a huge amount of its own insights, as does WooCommerce within WordPress. They've all got their own way of measuring things. So Facebook's insights are not alone. There's lots of other areas that we have insights or analytics to help you to better understand the kind of things that your audience is doing, the things that they love. So that brings us to the end of, I guess, a bit of a look at all the different options you have of where to find different alternatives or additions to your marketing solutions. The things that you might not have considered before are actually possible because you've got the chance now to not just use Facebook products, but to go a little bit further out as well. My name is Dante St James. You can contact me via dante@clickstarter.com.au. You can also stalk me around on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm everywhere. I have not been 100% dependent upon Facebook for quite some time now, not for any reason except that my audience, being businesses, are not necessarily on Facebook in the place where I want them to be interested in my stuff. The ones that are interested in my stuff tend to not be on Facebook at the time, but on other places, particularly LinkedIn, Google, and YouTube. Thank you very much. I hope you've learned something today, and please let us know if there's some other things you'd like us to do over the next month. I've already scheduled a whole bunch of months stuff going, but in the meantime, I hope to see you in the next webinar we do very shortly.